Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about why I believe it's really crucial to only have one approach to solving your porn addiction. Now, I'm not saying this to try and convince you to go and learn the Beyond Compulsion method. I'm more saying this because I think no matter what method you choose to use, it's so essential that there's only one approach. Like, you only use one method, whether that's our method or a different one. The reasons that I'm going to get into today will hopefully clarify why I think this is really important. So we were on a group call last night and we had a client who's been in the program quite a while and he's doing really well. Everything's going well for him. And he was listening to a university lecturer because he's at uni at the minute. And they were talking about food a little bit. And they were kind of sharing okay, with food, people may develop a eating disorder if they are bored or, they're tired or they're stressed. Or I think he was basically saying that his lecturer was explaining why people who have an eating disorder may choose to eat excessive amounts of food or choose to refrain from eating entirely. And he was explaining how there can be these emotional factors involved. And what this client was saying to us on our group call about this lecture was how it conflicted so much with what we teach. And how what happened is the addicted part of his mind started to question things. And honestly, I related to this so much because the addicted part of the mind for me will get particularly loud when there is some kind of information out there that I consume that completely goes against the Beyond Compulsion methodology and the simplicity of it. And this makes complete sense because the addicted part of the mind, and as I always say, there's these different parts in your mind, and the addicted part of the mind is the part that wants you to relapse. That part of your mind is very much invested in you adopting a position of helplessness. It wants to make you feel like you don't know what to do. It wants to make you feel unsure of yourself, anxious, confused, thinking into the future, thinking into the past. It basically wants you to feel powerless and then consent to complete helplessness and go ahead and relapse. Now, what's going on in society right now is we've got all this information. There's so many people providing advice, and a lot of it conflicts with, everyone's advice basically conflicts with each other's advice. There's some fundamental truths out there, and there's some neuroscience out there. And obviously some stuff is aligned, I guess, but for the most part, there's very few people who are in complete alignment in their approaches towards solving a problem. And what will happen is if you have all these different approaches and you're taking in all this information and you're reading all these books or listening to all these YouTube videos, you can get very confused very quickly. And I can't tell you how many guys I've worked with now who have told me, Tom, before your program, I have honestly listened to thousands of hours of content on this topic. That's come up probably 3 or 4 times in just the last week or two. It's insane the amount of guys who tell me Tom, thousands of hours of content, and they're not exaggerating. It's shit, you literally spent the last 20 years or 10 years or whatever, spending 5-6 hours a day consuming content on this problem, trying to figure out how do I solve it. Yeah, maybe it's not that much, but it's a lot. And I get that because, before Mary, I'd consumed something 100 self-improvement books. And none of them really got me anywhere because what would happen is there'd still be that moment of compulsive desire where the addicted part of the mind's screaming at you to relapse, and it comes up with all these unanswerable questions and tries to confuse the hell out of you. And like this client said, he was in the lecture hall, and the addicted part of the mind was really trying to sort of pounce on that opportunity to confuse him, because then the thought is, well, who do I listen to? Do I listen to this lecturer, or do I carry on doing the Beyond Compulsion method that's been working for me for the last however many months, right? And so what I would say is, one, yeah, you need just one approach if you want to solve your porn addiction or any addiction. I really believe that's true. Otherwise, the addicted part of the mind is going to just take advantage and confuse the hell out of you and try and use that to get you to relapse. And you're never really going to have that complete self-assurance where you can even talk about this problem from a place of authority, you've actually solved it. You're just going to still be confused and not really have one direct, simple way of dealing with the problem. And then number two, what I would say is obviously you want to keep on seeking a solution until you found one that does work. But then once you've found something that does work, the key thing is to then start to base your choices thereon and like your approach on evidence. Like this is quite an obvious point, but like for me, right, I know to only use the beyond compulsion method to solve the porn addiction. And the reason I know that is because of the evidence. And the evidence for me is how many times have I had a strong compulsive desire or a weak one, just any kind of compulsive desire basically. How many times have I experienced that, used my script, and that has enabled me to think through the entire choice in a rational way, get through the desire, and actually feel really good at the end of that process. Like how many times has that happened for me? And for me now it's thousands, maybe like over 10,000. I'm not entirely sure. So then it's quite obvious to me. It's like, well, yeah, like you just want to base your choices and your approach off the evidence of your life experience. And like, then you know, okay, well, follow this approach. And the same is true for like the inverse situation. So like, if you've tried to do NoFap and you've been going to the gym a lot and you've been journaling every day and you've been meditating and you've been doing all this like random self-improvement stuff, but you keep relapsing, you will then want to look at the evidence of that and go, okay, well, I've tried all this stuff, but then when I have an urge, it's still not effective in helping me think it through rationally and deal with that, and I still keep on relapsing. So just look at the evidence and go, okay, that approach isn't working or that approach is working. You know, I don't think this works personally, but if for you, like breathing in and out and like being aware of the sensations in your body and like accepting the urge, like if that is enabling you to feel really, really good and it's worked every single time and you've never relapsed when you've had that approach, you know, keep doing it. Like the evidence is there, right? So like keep doing that. I don't think that works personally. I've tried it, didn't work for me. I don't know anyone who it has like fully worked for sustainably, successfully, because it doesn't deal with the thought patterns and the addictive part of the mind, in my opinion. But like if your evidence of your own life is saying like this input equals this output and that output's really good, you want to just keep on doing the same input. And I feel like this is quite an obvious thing to say, but I just think it's so key, because when you're so like lost in the addiction, the addictive part of the mind creates all these unanswerable questions, and it tries to get you away from the things that work, and it tries to get you away from simplicity, and it tries to get you away from evidence and make it like all about who you are and like quite egotistical and identity based. And I just think it's so key to see that there's like patterns and there's data, and it's like, I mean, you don't need to like track it all, obviously I wouldn't do that, but it's more about just knowing like for yourself, like this thing works or this thing doesn't work, and then just sticking to one thing once you found a system that does work for you, and you just stick to that. And you basically have to be basically completely brutal in disregarding anything outside of the system that already works. And this is the bit where I feel like there's going to be the difference between those who can stick to something and succeed and those who end up going for the shiny object syndrome, let the addictive part of the mind convince them of some other thing, and then actually like end up relapsing and being a bit screwed and becoming potentially a circle person where you're just jumping from one method to another, to another, to another. And I think for me, like sticking with just one method, like sticking with Mary for 2 years has been the most amazing thing, because it's helped me see that it is possible to succeed in overcoming porn addiction in a sustainable way and feel good about that choice. But I know with almost certainty that if I had have jumped from this method to then start to like explore maybe IFS in more depth, or maybe start to explore like CBT or whatever, I think there's a very good chance that the choice in those moments of compulsive desire would have become very confusing, convoluted. I wouldn't have actually just stuck to the simplicity of one approach, and that would have probably led to me relapsing, to be open and honest about it. That's what I think would have happened. So yeah, I hope this makes sense. As I say, it's not me just trying to push the beyond compulsion method on you. Whether it's our method or a different one, I think you've got to look at the evidence of your own personal experience with whatever method you're choosing to use. If you haven't got a method in place already and you keep relapsing, well, you probably want to go get some kind of method. Like you want to have a system in place to deal with it. You don't want to just rely on motivation, willpower. That isn't going to work in a sustainable way. And yeah, if you want to learn if this is impacting your life, then I would take the compulsion test and get a free score out of 100. So yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.